The alarm clock went off at 5:30 a.m., as it always did. Marissa opened her eyes slowly, feeling the familiar weight of exhaustion that never seemed to leave her. The room was dark, lit only by the dim light seeping through the gaps in the shutters. She sighed deeply, allowing herself a few more seconds of rest before facing another day. Next to her, Robert snored softly, oblivious to the world around him. Marissa watched him for a moment, feeling a mixture of affection and resentment. There was a time when she used to wake up looking forward to starting the day next to him. Now, she felt more like a stranger in her own bed. With an almost superhuman effort, Marissa stood up, her bare feet touching the cold floor. She made her way silently to the bathroom, avoiding the creaking floorboards. In the mirror, she stared at her reflection, tired eyes, disheveled hair, and an expression that seemed to scream, "It's just another day." As she brushed her teeth, Marissa heard the soft sound of approaching footsteps. The door opened slowly, revealing Lily, her 7-year-old daughter, rubbing her sleepy eyes. "Mommy?" Lily murmured, her voice still hoarse from sleep. Marissa smiled, feeling her heart warm. "Good morning, my love. What are you doing up so early?" Lily approached, wrapping her arms around her mother's waist. "I had a bad dream. Can I stay with you?" Marissa stroked her daughter's hair, feeling a wave of love and protection. "Of course you can, darling. How about helping me make breakfast?" Lily's eyes lit up, and Marissa felt a twinge of guilt. How often had she really made time for moments like this? The daily routine seemed to sap all her energy, leaving her with little to offer her daughter beyond the basics. In the kitchen, Marissa and Lily worked together, preparing scrambled eggs and toast. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the room, bringing a momentary sense of comfort. Marissa watched Lily mixing the eggs in the frying pan, her tongue between her teeth in concentration, and felt a wave of pride and love so intense that it almost hurt. "You're doing a great job, Lily," Marissa praised, kissing the top of her daughter's head. Lily smiled, her eyes sparkling at the compliment. "Thanks, Mom. I like cooking with you." At that moment, Robert entered the kitchen, already dressed for work. He looked at the domestic scene in front of him with a neutral expression. "Good morning," he murmured, heading straight for the coffee maker. Marissa felt the atmosphere change instantly. The bubble of happiness that she and Lily had created seemed to have burst with Robert's arrival. "Good morning, Dad," Lily exclaimed, still excited. "Would you like to taste the eggs I made?" Robert gave a half smile, picking up his coffee cup. "Maybe later, Princess. I'm late for work." Marissa watched Lily's face wilt slightly and felt a spark of irritation. "Robert, it's just eggs. It won't kill you to eat some." Robert glared at Marissa. "Not everyone has the luxury of starting the day slowly, Marissa. Some of us have responsibilities." The words hit Marissa like a slap. She opened her mouth to retort, but held back, remembering Lily's presence. Instead, she forced a smile and turned to her daughter. "Let's finish our breakfast, dear. Your father's busy." Yes, Robert left without saying another word, leaving behind a heavy silence. Marissa fought the urge to cry, focusing on Lily and the rest of the morning ahead of them. After dropping Lily off at school, Marissa headed to her job as a cleaner in an office in downtown Chicago. The subway was crowded, as usual, and she found herself squeezed between strangers, all of whom looked as exhausted and discouraged as she felt. At the office, Marissa put on her uniform and began her daily routine. She cleaned desks, emptied garbage cans, and vacuumed endless carpets. The work was monotonous, but there was a certain peace in it. Here, at least, she knew exactly what was expected of her. During her lunch break, Marissa sat alone in the staff room. While eating her sandwich, she absent-mindedly leafed through an old magazine left on the table. A lottery ad caught her eye. What if, she muttered to herself, imagining for a moment what it would be like to win. Financial freedom, a bigger house, maybe even a vacation. The idea was tempting. Impulsively, Marissa decided to buy a ticket. On her way back from lunch, she stopped at a convenience store and spent $5 on a lottery ticket. She felt a little foolish doing it, but also a little hopeful. It was nice to have something to dream about, even if it was unlikely. The rest of the day passed in a blur of repetitive tasks. When she finally got home, Marissa was exhausted. She found Lily doing her homework at the kitchen table and Robert watching TV in the living room. "What's for dinner?" Robert asked, without taking his eyes off the screen. Marissa sighed. "I'll make a quick pasta dish. I'm tired." Robert made a sound of disapproval. "Again? You know I don't like eating the same thing several times a week." Marissa felt anger bubbling up inside her. "Well, if you want something different, feel free to cook it yourself." Robert finally looked at her, his expression a mixture of surprise and irritation. "What's your problem? I work all day to support this family. The least you could do is prepare a decent meal." Robert's words hit Marissa like a punch in the gut. She looked at Lily, who had stopped doing her homework and was watching the scene with wide, frightened eyes. "Let's talk about it later," Marissa said quietly, forcing herself to stay calm for Lily's sake. Dinner was a silent, tense meal. Marissa barely touched her food, her appetite completely ruined. After putting Lily to bed, she took refuge in the bathroom, finally allowing the tears to fall. As the hot water from the shower ran down her body, Marissa reflected on her life. How had it come to this? When had her marriage turned into this cold, resentful thing? When had she lost sight of her own dreams and aspirations? Stepping out of the shower, Marissa stared at her reflection in the foggy mirror. Her eyes, although red and swollen, had a glint of determination that hadn't been there before. "Something has to change," she said to herself, her voice low but firm. "I need to change." That night, lying in bed next to Robert, who was already fast asleep, Marissa made a silent promise to herself. She would find a way to transform her life, to recover the happiness and purpose she had lost along the way. She didn't know how or when, but she was determined to make it happen. With this thought in mind, Marissa finally fell asleep, dreaming of possibilities and new beginnings. The morning sun had barely begun to creep through the curtains when Marissa woke up, feeling strangely anxious. She glanced at the clock. 5:15. 15 minutes before her usual alarm. Beside her, Robert slept soundly, oblivious to the turmoil that was beginning to form in her triestiest. Marissa slid silently out of bed, her bare feet barely making a sound on the cold floor. She made her way to the kitchen, guided by an impulse she couldn't explain. There, on the worktop, was her handbag. With trembling fingers, she opened it and took out the lottery ticket she had bought the day before. Marissa's heart was pounding as she turned on the tablet and accessed the lottery's official website. The numbers from the previous night's draw flashed on the screen, seeming to dance before her eyes. She looked at her ticket, then back at the screen, once, twice, 3 times. "It can't be," she whispered, her voice barely audible. But it was. Every number matched perfectly. Marissa felt her legs go weak and leaned on the bench to stop herself from falling. She had won. Not just a few dollars, but the jackpot. Millions of dollars. For a moment, everything was silent. The world seemed to stop. Then a wave of emotions hit her so hard that she had to cover her mouth with her hand to stifle a sob. Joy, disbelief, fear, hope, all mixed together in an overwhelming whirlwind. "Mom?" Lily's sleepy voice brought her back to reality. Her daughter was standing in the kitchen doorway, rubbing her sleepy eyes. "Is everything all right?" Marissa quickly hid the note and forced a smile. "Yes, darling. Everything's fine. I just woke up a bit earlier today." As she prepared breakfast for Lily, Marissa's mind raced. What would she do with all this money? How would it change their lives? And then a dark thought struck her. How would Robert react? The image of her husband with his critical and devaluing attitude hovered in her mind. Would he be happy for her? Or would he see it as an opportunity for control? The initial euphoria began to give way to growing anxiety. The rest of the morning passed in a blur. Marissa moved on autopilot, taking Lily to school and going to work. But her mind was miles away, lost in a maze of possibilities and worries. On her lunch break, Marissa couldn't take it anymore. She needed to share this with someone she could trust. With her hand shaking slightly, she picked up the phone and dialed a familiar number. "Sonia, do you have a minute? I really need to talk." Half an hour later, Marissa was sitting in a cafe next to the law firm where Sonia worked. Her longtime friend was looking at her with a mixture of concern and curiosity. "Marissa, what's going on? You seem different." Marissa took a deep breath, looking around to make sure no one was listening. Then, in a low, trembling voice, she told Sonia everything. The ticket, the numbers, the $1 million prize. Sonia's eyes widened in shock. "My God, Marissa, this is incredible. But why do you look so worried?" Marissa bit her lip, feeling tears forming. "It's Robert. I don't know how he'll react. What if he tries to control everything? What if it only makes things worse between us?" Sonia reached out, taking Marissa's hand firmly. "Listen, you don't have to tell him right away. We have time to think about how to deal with it. But Marissa, do you realize what this means? It's your chance to start again, to do things your way." Sonia's words ignited a spark of hope in Marissa. She thought of all the times she had dreamed of having her own business, of providing a better life for Lily, of being truly independent. "You're right," Marissa said, feeling a determination grow inside her. "I need to be smart about this. I need to plan." Sonia smiled, a glint of complicity in her eyes. "And that's where I come in. I'm your lawyer, remember? Well, protect your interests." In the weeks that followed, Marissa and Sonia worked discreetly on the details. They researched the best investment options, explored the possibility of Marissa opening her own cleaning business, and even started looking for properties that could serve as a new home for Marissa and Lily. All this time, Marissa kept Robert's secret. She felt guilty for hiding something so significant, but every time he made a derogatory comment or ignored her efforts, she remembered why she was doing it. One evening, while Marissa was sitting on her bed, going over some documents that Sonia had prepared, Robert came into the room. He looked at her with a curious expression. "What's this?" he asked, pointing at the papers. Marissa felt her heart race. "Oh, just some work stuff," she lied, hating herself for it, but seeing no other way out. Robert frowned. "Since when do you bring work home? And why are you so secretive lately?" Marissa forced a smile. "I'm not being secretive. I'm just trying to organize myself better, for the future." For a moment, something seemed to flash through Robert's eyes. Concern, suspicion. But it soon disappeared, replaced by his usual indifference. "Whatever," he muttered, turning to leave the room. "Just don't stay up too late. You know how irritable you get when you don't get enough sleep." As soon as he left, Marissa let out the breath she hadn't even realized she was holding. Guilt and resentment warred inside her. Part of Marissa wanted to tell Robert everything, to give him a chance to change, to be the partner she had always wanted him to be. But another part, the part that had been diminished and devalued for years, cried out for freedom and independence. That night, lying in the darkness, Marissa made her decision. She would go ahead with the plan. She would claim the prize, start divorce proceedings, and start a new life with Lily. It would be difficult, scary, and full of uncertainties. But for the first time in years, Marissa felt she was in control of her destiny. As sleep finally enveloped her, Marissa dreamt of a bright future. A future where she was strong, independent, and, above all, happy. A future that, thanks to a lottery ticket bought on impulse, now seemed within reach. Tomorrow would bring its challenges, but Marissa was ready to face them. With every breath, she felt the old Marissa, the confident, dreamy woman she used to be, resurfacing. And this time, she wouldn't let anything or anyone smother that flame again. Saturday morning dawned with golden light seeping through the curtains of Marissa's room. She opened her eyes slowly, feeling a mixture of anxiety and determination that had become her constant companion over the last few weeks. Beside her, the bed was empty. Robert had already gone out to play golf with his work colleagues, as he did every Saturday. Marissa got up, put on her robe, and walked over to the window. Outside, the world continued its usual routine. Neighbors walking their dogs, children riding their bikes, the letter carrier making his deliveries. It all seemed so normal, so ordinary. But for Marissa, nothing was the same anymore. With a deep sigh, she turned away from the window and picked up her phone. There was a message from Sonia. "All set for today. I'll meet you at 10 a.m. at the address I sent you. Take heart, friend." Marissa felt her heart race. Today was the day she would take the first concrete step towards her new life. She and Sonia were going to visit some properties that could become their new home, a place just for her and Lily, away from the oppressive shadow of their failed marriage. "Mom?" Lily's sleepy voice brought her back to the present. "Can we have breakfast together today?" Marissa smiled, feeling a wave of love and guilt. "Of course, my love. How about pancakes?" As they prepared breakfast together, Marissa watched her daughter with renewed attention. Lily had seemed lighter, happier in recent weeks. Could it be that she could feel the change in the air too? "Lily, darling," Marissa began, hesitantly, "are you happy? I mean, with our life, our family?" Lily stopped mixing the pancake batter and looked at her mother with her big brown eyes. "I like it when we're together, Mom, but sometimes I feel sad when you and Dad fight." Lily's words hit Marissa like a punch in the gut. She knew that the arguments with Robert affected Lily, but hearing it directly from her daughter was painful. "I'm so sorry, my love," Marissa said, hugging Lily tightly. "Mommy's trying to make things better, okay? I promise." After breakfast, Marissa left Lily with the neighbor and went to the address Sonia had sent. It was a quiet neighborhood with trees lining the sidewalks and well-kept houses. Sonia was already there, talking to a real estate agent. "Marissa!" Sonia greeted her with a warm hug. "This is Amanda. She's going to show us some options today." The next few hours passed in a blur of spacious living rooms, modern kitchens, and verdant backyards. Each house they visited seemed to hold the promise of a new beginning, of a life free from the shackles of the past. In the third house, Marissa felt something different. It was a 2-story house with a welcoming veranda and a small garden at the back. As she walked through the rooms, she could imagine Lily playing in the living room, the two of them cooking together in the spacious kitchen, quiet evenings reading a book on the veranda. "What do you think?" Sonia asked, noticing the sparkle in Marissa's eyes. "It's perfect," Marissa whispered, almost afraid to believe it could be real. After discussing the details with Amanda, Marissa and Sonia sat down in a nearby cafe to talk. "So," Sonia began, her tone becoming more serious, "have you decided how you're going to tell Robert?" Marissa felt her stomach twist. This was the part she was dreading the most. I don't know yet. Part of me just wants to take Lily and go. Leave a letter explaining everything. But I know it's not fair. Not to him, and not to Lily." Sonia nodded understandingly. "I understand. But Marisa, the longer you put it off, the harder it will be. And remember, you have rights. The money you've earned, the decisions you're making, it's all legitimate." Marisa knew that Sonia was right, but years of self-doubt and having her opinions devalued by Robert had left deep scars. "What if he tries to stop me? What if he fights for custody of Lily?" "That's why we're planning everything carefully," Sonia replied, her voice firm and reassuring. "We've got all the bases covered. You're not doing anything wrong, Marisa. You're just looking for the happiness you deserve." When Marisa returned home that afternoon, she found Robert watching TV in the living room. He barely looked up when she entered. "Where were you?" he asked, his tone more curious than accusatory. For a moment, Marisa considered telling him everything, opening her heart, explaining about the lottery win, about her plans, about how she felt suffocated in her marriage. But then Robert let out an impatient sigh, and the moment passed. "I just went for a walk," she replied, feeling the weight of the lie on her chest. "I needed a break." Robert looked at her with an expression that Marisa couldn't decipher. Was it concern? Mistrust? For a brief moment, she glimpsed something in his gaze, a vulnerability, perhaps even fear. But before she could explore this, the moment passed and Robert turned his attention back to the TV. That night, lying in bed next to a sleeping Robert, Marisa found herself observing her husband's face, the frown lines around his eyes, the unshaven face, the slight frown even in his sleep. This was the man she had dreamed of building a life with, the father of her child. How had it come to this? A part of her wanted to shake him, wake him up and shout, "Look at me, see me for real." But another part, the part that had made the decision to leave, knew it was too late. In the days that followed, Marisa continued her preparations in secret. She and Sonia finalized the paperwork for buying the house, started planning the move, and discussed the legal details of the divorce. Each step taken was a mixture of emotions, hope for the future, and sadness at what she was leaving behind. At home, Marisa noticed a subtle change in Robert. He seemed more attentive, almost as if he sensed that something was about to change. There were moments when she caught him looking at her with an expression she hadn't seen for years, a mixture of affection and concern. One evening, while Marisa was washing up after dinner, Robert approached her hesitantly. "Is everything all right, Marisa?" he asked, his voice softer than usual. "You seem different lately." Marisa felt her heart squeeze. "I'm fine," she replied, avoiding his gaze. "Just thinking a lot about life, you know?" Robert was silent for a moment, as if he wanted to say something more. But then, as so often before, the moment passed, and he simply nodded before leaving the kitchen. That night, alone in her bedroom, she had started sleeping in the guest room, claiming insomnia. Marisa cried silently. She cried for the marriage she had once dreamed of having, for the family she had imagined building, and for the woman she had lost along the way. But when the tears dried, Marisa felt a renewed resolve. The road ahead would be difficult, but it was necessary, not just for her, but for Lily, and even, in a way, for Robert. They all deserved the chance to be truly happy, even if it meant going their separate ways. With this certainty in her heart, Marisa finally fell asleep, dreaming of the day when she could look back and see this moment not as an end, but as the beginning of something new and wonderful. Thursday morning dawned gray and cold, as if the sky itself reflected the emotional turmoil Marisa felt. She woke up before the alarm clock, her heart beating fast in her chest. Today was the day she would finally take the decisive step towards her new life. Marisa got up quietly, avoiding waking Robert, who was sleeping soundly beside her. She watched him for a moment, a mixture of contradictory emotions flooding her chest. There was so much she wanted to tell him, so many accumulated sorrows, so many broken dreams. But now was not the time. Perhaps it never would be. In the bathroom, Marissa looked at her reflection in the mirror. Her eyes, although tired, shone with a determination she hadn't seen for years. She took a deep breath, trying to calm her nerves. "You can do this," she muttered to herself. "For you, for Lily." Going downstairs, Marissa found Lily already awake, sitting at the kitchen table with her favorite cereal. "Good morning, Mommy." Lily smiled, her innocence contrasting painfully with the gravity of the day ahead. "Good morning, my love," Marissa replied, kissing the top of her daughter's head. "Did you sleep well?" As she prepared the coffee, Marissa watched Lily, her heart squeezing. How could she explain to a 7-year-old that her life was about to change drastically? That her parents, the two people who were supposed to be her safe haven, could no longer live together? "Lily, darling," Marissa began, sitting down next to her daughter. "You know that Mommy loves you very much, don't you?" Lily nodded, her big brown eyes fixed on her mother. "And you know that, no matter what, I'll always be here for you, right?" "Yes, Mom," Lily replied, a shadow of concern crossing her young face. "Is everything all right?" Marissa felt tears forming but held them back. "Yes, my love. I just wanted you to know that." The rest of the morning passed in a blur. Marissa took Lily to school, exchanging a meaningful glance with the teacher who had been informed of the situation. Then she drove to Sonia's office, her heart heavy but her resolve unwavering. Sonia was waiting for her at reception, her face a mixture of concern and support. "Ready?" she asked softly. Marissa nodded, unable to trust her voice at that moment. The two women entered the conference room where Robert's lawyer was already waiting for them. Robert himself would be arriving shortly. Marissa sat down, feeling as if she was about to jump off a cliff. The minutes dragged by. Marissa flipped distractedly through the documents in front of her, the words "petition for divorce" leaping off the page like a silent scream. Then the door opened. Robert walked in, his face a mask of neutrality. For a brief moment, his eyes met Marissa's, and she saw a mixture of emotions there that took her by surprise: hurt, confusion, and something that seemed almost regret. "Good morning, everyone," Robert's lawyer broke the tense silence. "Shall we begin?" The next few hours were an emotional roller coaster. They discussed the division of assets, custody of Lily, child support. Each topic seemed to tear a piece out of Marissa's heart. She watched Robert, looking for some sign of the man she had fallen in love with so many years ago. Occasionally, she caught him looking at her with an expression she couldn't decipher. During a break, Marissa went outside to get some air. In the hallway, she checked her phone, seeing a text message that made her heart stop. "Ms. Marissa, this is the state lottery. We urgently need to discuss your prize. There is an important clause that requires your immediate attention." Marissa felt her world spin. A clause? What could be so urgent? With trembling hands, she called the number back. "Ms. Marissa?" The voice on the other end sounded formal. "We have a delicate situation. We've just discovered that there's a clause in the lottery rules that requires the winner to be legally married when claiming the prize." Marissa felt as if the ground had disappeared from under her feet. "What? But that's impossible. I bought the ticket. I won." "We understand your frustration, Mom. Unfortunately, this clause was recently included as part of an initiative to promote family stability. If you sign the divorce papers today, you will lose your right to the prize." Marissa's world fell apart. All her plans, all her dreams of a new life seemed to be slipping through her fingers. She leaned against the wall, struggling to breathe. Just then, the door to the conference room opened and Robert came out. He saw her standing there, pale and trembling, and approached her hesitantly. "Marissa, is everything all right?" She looked at him, seeing genuine concern in his eyes. For a moment, Marissa considered telling him everything about the ticket, the prize, her plans, but the words got stuck in her throat. I need a moment," she managed to say before hurrying away towards the bathroom. Locked in a cubicle, Marissa let the tears fall freely. All her courage, all her determination seemed to have evaporated. What would she do now? Go through with the divorce and lose the chance of a better life for her and Lily? Or stay in an unhappy marriage because of the money? After a few minutes, Marissa heard a soft knock on the bathroom door. "Marissa?" It was Sonia's voice. "Is everything all right in there?" Slowly, Marissa unlocked the door. Sonia stared at her, her eyes full of concern. What happened? In a halting voice, Marissa explained the situation. Sonia listened in silence, her face a mixture of shock and compassion. "Oh, Marissa," she whispered, pulling her friend into a tight hug. "I'm so sorry, but that doesn't change who you are or what you deserve. We have to think about this calmly." Marissa nodded, grateful for her friend's strength. "I don't know what to do, Sonia. Everything seems so impossible right now." "Nothing is impossible," Sonia replied firmly. "Let's go back and ask for some time. Tell them you need to reconsider some things. Don't make any rash decisions." With hesitant steps, Marissa returned to the conference room. Robert and the lawyers looked at her curiously. I need more time," Marissa said, her voice firmer than she expected. "There are a few things I need to reconsider before I sign anything." Robert stared at her, a mixture of confusion and something else in his eyes. For a moment, Marissa thought she saw a glimmer of the man she had fallen in love with so many years ago. "All right," he said softly. "We can put this off." As everyone began to collect their belongings, Marissa found herself lost in thought. The future, which had seemed so clear and promising just a few hours ago, was now shrouded in a fog of uncertainty. Leaving the office, Marissa stopped for a moment, looking up at the cloudy sky. The gray clouds seemed to perfectly reflect the turmoil in her heart. But somewhere beyond those clouds, the sun was still shining, and Marissa knew that somehow she would find a way through this storm. With a deep sigh, she got into her car, ready to face whatever fate had in store for her. The day of the divorce hadn't ended as she had hoped, but maybe, just maybe, this was the universe giving her one last chance to reconsider everything. The rain was falling softly over Chicago, creating a melancholy rhythm on the windows of the small cafe where Marissa was sitting. She watched the drops trickle down the glass, each one seeming to carry a piece of her broken dreams. The rich aroma of espresso filled the air, but Marissa barely noticed it, lost in her thoughts. Her hands trembled slightly as she held the cup, the warmth of the liquid contrasting with the chill she felt inside. The revelation about the lottery clause had left Marissa in a state of shock and confusion. Everything she had planned, all her dreams of a new life, seemed to have gone up in smoke before her eyes. "How did we get to this point?" Marissa muttered to herself, her voice almost inaudible over the soft buzz of the coffee. She closed her eyes, letting the memories flood her mind. She remembered the day she met Robert, the sparkle in his eyes when he asked her to marry him, the joy she felt when Lily was born. Where was that couple in love now? When exactly had things started to fall apart? Distant thunder echoed, making Marissa open her eyes. She observed the other customers in the cafe, couples chatting animatedly, friends laughing together, people alone immersed in their laptops. Everyone seemed to have a purpose, a direction. Marissa felt more lost than ever. Her phone vibrated, bringing her back to reality. It was a message from Sonia. "How are you? Call if you need to talk. I'm here for you." Marissa felt a wave of gratitude for her friend. Sonia had been her pillar of support throughout this process, but not even Sonia could solve this dilemma for her. With a deep sigh, Marissa took a pen from her bag and began scribbling on a napkin. On one side, she wrote, "Stay." On the other, "Leave." Under each word, she began to list pros and cons. Staying meant financial security, a comfortable life for Lily, the chance to use the money to do something meaningful. But it also meant staying in a loveless marriage, continuing to live a lie. Leaving meant freedom, the chance to rediscover who she was, to show Lily what it means to be strong and independent. But it also meant struggling financially, possibly jeopardizing Lily's future, giving up a unique opportunity. The more Marissa wrote, the more confused she felt. It wasn't just about money or freedom. It was about identity, about the kind of example she wanted to be for her daughter, about the meaning of happiness and fulfillment. "More coffee, Mom?" The waitress's gentle voice interrupted her thoughts. Marissa looked up, finding a sympathetic smile. "Yes, please," she replied, forcing a smile in return. As the waitress filled her cup, Marissa noticed the name tag, Elena, and a wedding ring on her left hand. "Elena," Marissa began, hesitantly, "can I ask you a personal question?" The waitress nodded, curious. "You're married, right? How do you know if you're doing the right thing? If marriage is worth fighting for?" Elena looked surprised by the question, but her face softened with understanding. She sat down in the chair opposite Marissa, the coffee momentarily forgotten. "Look, I don't know your situation," Elena began, her voice gentle, "but I can tell you that no marriage is perfect. Mine certainly isn't. We've had our ups and downs, times when I've thought about giving up. But at the end of the day, the question I always ask myself is, does this person still make me want to be a better version of myself?" Elena's words struck Marissa like a thunderbolt. She thought of Robert, how he was in the early years of their marriage, how he inspired and supported her. When had that changed? And more importantly, was there any chance of regaining that connection? "Thank you, Elena," Marissa said, feeling strangely lighter. "You've given me a lot to think about." After Elena walked away, Marissa picked up her phone and, before she could change her mind, typed a message to Robert. "Can we talk when I get home? It's important." The reply came almost immediately. "Of course, I'll be waiting." Marissa's heart raced. She didn't know exactly what she would say to Robert, but she knew they needed to have an honest conversation, without masks or resentment. When Marissa arrived home, she found Robert sitting in the living room, a look of concern on his face. Lily was at a friend's house, giving them the privacy they needed. "Hi," Marissa said softly, taking a seat on the sofa opposite Robert. "Hi," he replied, his voice just as low. "Everything okay? You seemed shaken up earlier today." Marissa took a deep breath, gathering her courage. "Robert, we need to talk. Really talk. About us. About our marriage. About everything." Robert nodded slowly, a mixture of fear and curiosity in his eyes. "Okay, I'm listening." And so, for the first time in years, Marissa and Robert really talked. She talked about her loneliness, about how she felt unappreciated and invisible. He admitted his own fears and insecurities, how the stress of work had turned him into someone he himself no longer recognized. Tears were shed, voices were raised, years of hurt and resentment came to the surface. But in the midst of all this, something unexpected began to emerge: understanding. "I'm sorry," Robert said at one point, his voice breaking. I didn't see how much I was hurting you." Marissa felt her heart squeeze. I'm sorry, too. I should have spoken up sooner. I should have fought harder for what we had. When silence finally fell between them, it was already night. The rain outside had stopped, leaving a fresh, clean air. Marisa stood up and opened the window, letting the breeze in. "What now?" Robert asked, his voice tired but with a note of hope that Marisa hadn't heard for a long time. Marisa turned to him, really seeing him for the first time in years. Not the cynical, distant Robert of recent times, but the man she had fallen in love with, Lily's devoted father, the partner she had always wished she had. "Now," Marisa said, feeling a weight being lifted from her shoulders, "now we decide what we really want, and whether we're willing to fight for it." Robert stood up, hesitantly approaching Marisa. "I want to try," he said softly, "if you want me to. I want to be the man you deserve, the father Lily needs." Marisa felt tears forming in her eyes, but this time they were tears of relief and hope. "I want to try too," she whispered. At that moment, with the city falling asleep outside and the future still uncertain ahead, Marisa and Robert took the first step towards reconciliation. It wouldn't be easy, they both knew that. There was a lot to be rebuilt, a lot to be forgiven. But for the first time in a long time, there was hope. Marisa hadn't yet told them about the lottery ticket, about the dilemma she was facing. But at that moment, looking into Robert's eyes and seeing the reflection of the man she had fallen in love with, she realized that maybe, just maybe, she had already found her real prize. The soft light of dawn seeped through the curtains of the bedroom, painting the walls in shades of gold and pink. Marisa opened her eyes slowly, feeling strangely light. Beside her, Robert was still sound asleep, his face relaxed in a way she hadn't seen for years. For a moment, Marisa stood there, watching the man with whom she had shared so many years of her life, the worry lines on his forehead, the gray hairs at his temples, the slight snoring that she used to find irritating, but which now sounded almost comforting. The conversation from the night before still echoed in her mind. Hours of raw honesty, of tears shed and promises whispered. It hadn't been easy, but for the first time in a long time, Marisa felt a spark of hope ignite in her chest. Careful not to wake Robert, she got up and went to the kitchen. As she prepared the coffee, Marisa thought about the next steps. They had agreed to try, to fight for marriage, but how exactly would they do it? The rich aroma of coffee filled the kitchen, bringing back memories of happier mornings, when she and Robert used to share breakfast together, laughing and making plans for the future. "Good morning," Robert's gruff voice surprised her. He was standing in the kitchen doorway, looking a little out of place, as if he wasn't sure of his place there. Marisa offered a small smile. "Good morning? Coffee?" Robert nodded, accepting the cup she offered him. Their fingers touched briefly, sending a familiar shiver down Marisa's spine. "So," Robert began hesitantly, "how are we going to do this?" Marisa took a deep breath. "I think we need to start from scratch, relearn how to communicate, how to trust each other." Robert agreed, his eyes fixed on his coffee cup. "I've been thinking, maybe we could do something together, as a family, something to help us reconnect." Marisa felt her heart warm at the suggestion. That would be great. Lily would be happy. As if summoned by her name, Lily entered the kitchen, rubbing her sleepy eyes. She stopped, surprised to see her parents together so early in the morning. "Good morning, darling," Marisa smiled, opening her arms for a hug. Lily ran into her mother's arms, but her eyes were fixed on Robert. "Dad, didn't you go to work today?" Robert knelt down to Lily's level, his face softening with a genuine smile. "No, Princess. I thought we could spend the day together. How about a family project?" Lily's eyes widened with excitement. Really? We can make that birdhouse you promised? Robert looked surprised for a moment, clearly having forgotten his promise, but then he nodded resolutely. Of course we can. In fact, how about we do something even bigger? We could redecorate your room if you like. Lily let out a squeal of delight, jumping up and down with excitement. Marissa watched the scene, feeling a wave of emotion engulf her. This was the Robert she had fallen in love with, the loving and caring father she knew he could be. The next few hours were filled with planning and preparation. They made a list of materials needed, discussed colors and themes, and even made a small sketch of how Lily's room would look. At the shopping center, while they were choosing paints and decorations, Marissa noticed how Robert was present, really listening to Lily's ideas and offering suggestions. He wasn't distracted by his phone or preoccupied with work. He was there, totally present in the moment. Back at home, they got to work. Robert and Marissa painted the walls while Lily, wearing an apron too big for her, helped out as best she could. The air was filled with the smell of fresh paint and Lily's laughter. At one point, as Marissa stretched to reach a high corner, she felt Robert's hand on her waist, steadying her. The touch, so familiar and yet so new, made her heart leap. "Careful," he murmured, his voice softer than she could remember hearing it in years. Their gazes met, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. There was so much being said in that look: regret, hope, forgiveness, love. Marissa felt tears forming in her eyes, but this time they were tears of joy. The moment was broken by Lily, who accidentally knocked over a pot of paint, creating a large stain on the floor. Instead of getting angry, as Marissa had feared, Robert started laughing. "Well, I think we found the perfect color for the carpet," he joked, making Lily laugh too. As they cleaned up the mess together, Marissa realized that this was the kind of moment she had always dreamed of for her family. Not perfect, but real, full of love, patience, and acceptance. In the evening, with Lily finally asleep in her newly decorated room, Marissa and Robert sat on the balcony, each with a glass of wine. The silence between them was comfortable, full of possibilities. "Thank you for today," Robert finally said, his voice low and sincere. "I'd forgotten how nice it is to just be there." Marissa nodded, feeling emotion tighten her throat. "Me too. It's been a wonderful day." Robert turned to her, his eyes shining with determination. "Marissa, I know we have a long way to go. I know I've hurt you in ways that I may never be able to completely repair, but I want you to know that I'm committed to this, to us, to our family." Marissa felt the tears run down her cheeks. "Me too, Robert. I want this too." He held out his hand, interlacing his fingers with hers. The gesture was simple but loaded with meaning. It was a new beginning, a silent promise to do better, to be better. As they sat there, hands linked and hearts open, Marissa thought about the lottery ticket, still hidden in her drawer. The prize that had once seemed to be the answer to all her problems now seemed almost insignificant compared to what she had rediscovered today. She knew she still had to tell Robert about the ticket, about the dilemma she was facing. But at that moment, looking at the man next to her and feeling the love that still existed between them, Marissa realized that she had already won the real prize. The road ahead would still be long and undoubtedly full of challenges. There would be difficult days, old habits to break, and wounds to heal. But for the first time in a long time, Marissa felt that they had a real chance. A chance to rebuild not only their marriage, but the family they had both always dreamed of having. As the night wore on and the stars twinkled in the sky above them, Marissa and Robert stood on the balcony, planning their future, one day at a time. And in Marissa's heart, the flame of hope once almost extinguished, now burned bright and strong. The autumn sun bathed the Andersons' backyard in warm golden light. Leaves in shades of red and orange danced gently in the air, creating a colorful carpet over the freshly cut grass. In the center of this idyllic setting, Marissa and Robert were working side by side, setting up a picnic table. "Pass me the hammer, please," Robert asked, holding out his hand without taking his eyes off the board he was holding. Marissa smiled, handing him the tool. Their fingers touched briefly, sending a familiar shiver down her spine. Even after months of reconciliation, these little moments still had the power to make her feel like a teenager in love. "You know," Marissa began, sitting down on the grass next to Robert, "if someone had told me a year ago that we'd be here, doing this together, I would have thought it was crazy." Robert stopped what he was doing, turning to look at her. His eyes, once so distant and cold, now shone with affection and understanding. "I know. Sometimes I still wonder how we got so lucky to have a second chance." Marissa felt a lump form in her throat. The journey to this moment had not been easy. There had been days of doubt, moments of frustration, and nights of silent tears. But every obstacle they overcame, every difficult conversation they had, brought them closer to each other. "Daddy? Mommy?" Lily's excited voice cut through the air, breaking the moment of reflection. She came running across the yard, her hair flying in the wind, a beaming smile on her face. "Look what I did at school." Lily held out a colorful drawing, showing 3 stick figures, a family, clearly. But what caught Marissa's eye was not the figures themselves, but the big red heart that surrounded them. "It's beautiful, darling," Marissa said, pulling Lily into a tight hug. Robert joined them, wrapping them both in his strong arms. At that moment, surrounded by the love of her family, Marissa felt a wave of gratitude so intense that it almost left her breathless. She thought about the lottery ticket, still tucked away in her drawer, and the decision she had made. A few weeks earlier, Marissa had finally plucked up the courage to tell Robert about the lottery win and the dilemma she was facing. She had expected anger, perhaps even accusations of betrayal, but Robert's reaction surprised her. "Marissa," he had said, holding her hands gently, "money doesn't matter. What matters is what we've built together, what we're rebuilding. If we decide to use the prize, let it be for something that unites us even more as a family." His words had touched Marissa deeply. Together they decided to use some of the money to start a family business, a small ecological cleaning company, something Marissa had always dreamed of doing. "Earth to Marissa," Robert's playful voice brought her back to the present. "Where were you?" Marissa smiled, shaking her head. "Just thinking about how we got here, how blessed we are." Robert nodded, understanding. He stood up, holding out his hand to help her. "Let's go. We have guests coming soon." As they went into the house to get ready, the sound of approaching cars heralded the arrival of the first guests. Today was a special day, the official opening of Anderson's Green Cleaning, the family's new business. Sonia was the first to arrive, bringing with her a bottle of champagne and a tight hug for Marissa. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered in her friend's ear. Soon the backyard was full of friends, family, and even some future clients. The aroma of barbecue filled the air, mingling with the sound of laughter and lively conversation. In a quiet moment, Marissa moved a little away from the crowd, observing the scene before her. Robert was grilling hamburgers, laughing at something his father had said. Lily was running around the lawn with other children, her infectious laughter echoing through the air. Sonia was chatting animatedly with some guests, probably explaining the benefits of eco-friendly cleaning products. "It's quite a sight, isn't it?" Her mother's soft voice surprised her. Marissa turned around, meeting Elena's affectionate gaze. "It is, Mom. Sometimes I still have to pinch myself to believe it's real." Elena smiled, slipping her arm around her daughter's shoulders. "You know, Marissa, when you told me about your problems with Robert, I confess I was skeptical about the possibility of you reconciling. But seeing you now, it's as if you've been reborn." Marissa felt tears forming in her eyes. "Thank you, Mom, for never giving up on me, on us." They stood there for a moment in comfortable silence, observing the celebration. Then Sonia approached, a mysterious smile on her face. "Marissa, I have some news for you," she said, barely containing her excitement. "Remember that lottery clause? Well, they've decided to revoke it. The prize is yours, regardless of your marital status." For a moment, Marissa was stunned. All the anxiety and fear she had felt months ago seemed so distant now. She looked at Robert, who was approaching with Lily in his arms, both smiling at her. "You know what, Sonia?" Marissa said, a serene smile on her face. "It doesn't matter anymore. The real prize, I've already won." At that moment, with the sun setting over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, Marissa felt a peace she hadn't experienced for years. She had been through storms, faced her deepest fears, and come out the other side stronger and wiser. Robert joined them, setting Lily down. He slipped his arm around Marissa's waist, pulling her close. "Is everything all right?" he asked, noticing the emotion in her eyes. Marissa nodded, unable to speak. Instead, she turned and kissed him, right there, in front of everyone. It was a kiss full of promise, gratitude, and a love renewed and strengthened by the trials they had faced. When they parted, the applause and whistles of their guests enveloped them. Lily jumped for joy, shouting "Iba" over and over again. "Attention, everyone," Robert called out, raising his glass. "I'd like to make a toast to family, to new beginnings, and to the love that overcomes all obstacles." "To family," everyone replied in unison. As the glasses clinked and more laughter filled the air, Marissa looked around, at the people she loved, at the life she had rebuilt. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, the tears shed, the nights of doubt, the moments of despair. But she also thought about the strength she had discovered within herself, the love that had proved stronger than resentment, and the family she had fought to keep together. The future was still uncertain, full of challenges and possibilities. If this story touched your heart, then don't forget to leave a like. Use the super thanks, located just below the video, to directly support the channel and help create more amazing content. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any updates. Now, don't miss the next incredible story that's appearing on your screen. I greatly appreciate your support and hope to see you soon. Thank you for watching.